Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another television series review for you all, so hopefully you find this one interesting. This series is from the USA, English language, released in the year 2025, directed by Max Winkler and Ian Brennan, and this series is called Monster, the Ed Gein story. So Monster, this is the third installment of the series. The first season was Jeffrey Dahmer, the second season Menendez brothers, and now we've got Ed Gein. Ed Gein, a notorious serial killer from the 1950s, he did horrible things with dead bodies, and so this series really looks into his early life and the relationship with his mother, the crimes that he committed and the influence that he has. So whether it's other serial killers taking inspiration from him or people making movies about him, and so how troublesome that can be. So it all adds up to something very interesting, and what happens at that point on is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Monster, the Ed Gein story. I was actually really interested because I'm a big fan of the Monster series. So the Jeffrey Dahmer, the opening season I thought was really good. It was very dark, very disturbing, and just an insight into a very troubled mind. But I haven't actually seen the Menendez brothers, the second season. So I will review that, but the reason why I haven't yet is because I haven't seen it. It just didn't really interest me that much. But then coming into Ed Gein, I thought this is definitely a series I need to watch for two reasons. Number one, he is the grandfather of serial killers. We've all heard about Ed Gein, but I really didn't delve into his personal life. And so for that, I wanted to see the series. And the other reason I wanted to see the series is how much controversy it's created. This is something that's upset a lot of people for reasons that I'll go into a little bit later, but that was another driving force in behind wanting to watch the third installment of this series. And so not knowing exactly what to expect, I knew, Ed Gein, inspiration for Leatherface and all that kind of stuff, but I just didn't know exactly too much about his relationship with his mother and the crimes that he committed, and I was hoping that this would stay true to he himself, and so I'd learn a little bit more. After watching Monster, the Ed Gein story, I can agree with some of the criticism, but I disagree with a lot of the criticism, and that's something I'll go into a little bit later. But what I liked about this series is that it is not so much a story about Ed Gein himself, but our relationship with serial killers and our relationship with the legendary sort of figure of a serial killer and how troublesome that can be. So what I mean by that is that there's a line near the end of this series where the nurse says, "You should write your own book, Ed, because things are exaggerated. We don't know what's the truth and what's not the truth." And so I thought that really summed the series up very well, because there are exaggerated moments in this series where a lot of people criticise it because they were saying he never did this, whether it's he does something that Leatherface does in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it's obviously the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He does something that happens in Psycho from Alfred Hitchcock, and that's something that was very obvious, and it wasn't something that would necessarily happen, but I thought that really summed up what the nurse said at the end of this series, is that things are exaggerated. We don't know what's true, we don't know what's real. And that's what happens with these notorious figures. As time goes on, the legend grows, and you don't know what's fiction and what's non-fiction. And so I thought that was very interesting, and I think a lot of people misunderstood what the point of those particular scenes in this series were for. And so I don't share the common opinion that it was very, very silly and ridiculous. I actually thought as though it summed up what we see as serial killers, and as the time goes on, we exaggerate things, we embellish things to a point where it is fiction. And so I thought that was really, really well done. And as I said, I thought that was very misunderstood. So Charlie Hunnam as Ed Gein, I thought was interesting. The show is very, very dark and brutal. And so I thought that was actually quite decent. And there's a touch of humanity thrown into Ed Gein. And that's another very controversial thing. People are saying that this shouldn't humanise Ed Gein. Ed Gein was a monster. But I couldn't disagree anymore. Yes, you should humanise these people, because at the end of the day, they are human. Whether it's Ted Bundy, Richard Ramirez, Harold Shipman, or Ed Gein, yes, they're doing horrible things. And this is the problem with today's society, is that we want to brush them aside, say that they're monsters, say that they're otherworldly beings like Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger, but they're just like you and me. And until we can actually accept that, we can't really understand these people. And so that's something you just push it aside and you're pretending it's not there, but it is there. And this is how serial killers get away with these things. Because we associate serial killers with just otherworldly monsters, they get away with things because they've got likeable attributes. Whether it's they talk very well, or their personality, their interests are very similar to ours, and that's how they go under the radar. And so I thought this show actually humanising Ed Gein wasn't necessarily feeling sorry for him, but it was just showing that he had these emotions. And that's what's scarier, is because this is real life. And so I don't share the idea that he should have been demonised to the point of not being human, because at the end of the day he was a human being. And so whether we like that or not, we have to actually come to terms with that. And so I don't share that common opinion opinion that this is, you know, humanising a demonised figure, because it's humanising a human. And so he's doing horrible, horrible things, but when we actually come to terms with the fact that he's just like you and me, but it was just a situation that he grew up in, and untreated mental illness, I just thought to myself, all right, well, this is actually very soul-searching. It's forcing us to use society under a microscope and seeing where the failures of society actually shape these people. And so I thought that was really, really well done. It was a brave, it was a brave thing to do from the directors, to actually humanise someone that has been a legendary figure as far as the horror world is concerned. So I thought that was really well done. I don't share that opinion that it was very disrespectful to humanise someone, because, as I said, he is a human being. So that was all very good. The overall tone to this series, it's all over the place. It's very chaotic, but I actually like the chaos. I thought there was a certain sense of purpose to that chaos, because it would lead you into different stories, whether it was about Ed Gein himself, or Alfred Hitchcock directing Psycho, or Tobe Hooper directing Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is where life imitates art and art imitates life. And I thought it got very interesting, because not only is it about the man himself, but it's about the influence. And this is the fascination, the morbid fascination we have with serial killers. Should we be idolising serial killers like we do? And so that was something that, again, forces us to look in the mirror and actually assess whether or not we are contributing to the problem. So that is, again, I thought that was really, really well done. As I said, it's very chaotic. If you like a straightforward formula, you're not going to like this show. But for me, I just thought the wildness to it had a strong purpose. And at the end, I actually thought as though it really hit the mark. So overall, it's a deeply disturbing experience. I thought as though it was just as disturbing as Dharma, although Dharma was a lot more grounded in realism, whereas this takes a lot of creative liberties. But as I said, the liberties, as what the purpose of the show was, is that it is, the further this name of Ed Gein goes on, the more embellishment that's made. If I have issues with this series, I will say that Charlie Hunnam as Ed Gein, he has a movie star presence about him. He has that look where I didn't really buy his character. I always felt as though I was watching Charlie Hunnam. I'd never felt as though I was watching Ed Gein. And so he was too clean, he was too handsome, and it just didn't feel right. And so I don't like this idea of getting really famous Hollywood actors playing these characters, because then you start to think, I'm not actually watching the real person, I'm actually watching an actor play someone. And so he does a decent job. He has a very, very quirky sort of way of talking. It's creepy, and some of these set pieces were phenomenal. Truly, truly scary. And so that was really good, and that was because of his performance. But as I said, I'd kept seeing Charlie Hunnam instead of Ed Gein. And so that was a huge issue I had with this series, and it's the only real issue I had with what was just a fascinating and morbid look at a infamous serial killer that has really become stuff of legend as far as the horror genre is concerned. And so this series really looks at it in a different way. I can understand people not liking it, but for me, I actually liked that it was a little bit different, and it blended fantasy with reality in a way that I thought really it shows, as I said, that morbid fascination with serial killers and how troublesome and how far-fetched it can actually get to. And so overall, it is just as good as Dharma. Also, Dharma might be a little bit better, but this is certainly worth watching. Apart from the fact that I just couldn't brush Charlie Hunnam aside instead of actually watching Ed Gein, it was definitely worth the effort. It's 8 episodes, and it's definitely didn't outstay its welcome, so I can appreciate that. So overall, for Monster, the Ed Gein story, going to give this one 4 stars. I actually really enjoyed it. Go out there and see it. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.